Right now, somewhere in your house, a habit you started with real excitement is about to die. Not today, not tomorrow, in about a week. You won't see it coming. It will just feel harder, then heavier, then gone. You'll call it laziness. It isn't. Something inside your brain is already counting down, and by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what it's waiting for. Think about the last habit you tried: a morning walk, no phone before bed, one page of a book before sleep. At first, it felt easy, almost fun. Then, around a weekend, it got heavy. Getting up felt like a fight. You didn't get lazy. Something shifted inside your brain, and almost nobody tells you what that something is. Here's the first surprise. Habits are not built by motivation. They are built by repetition inside a stable setting. That's really it. No fireworks, no secret trick, just the same action in the same place at the same time over and over. Psychologist Wendy Wood, who has spent decades studying automatic behavior at the University of Southern California, found that close to half of everything you do in a normal day is done automatically. Same location, same time, same trigger. You are not deciding to brush your teeth each morning. Your brain is simply running a program it is already memorized the moment it recognizes the bathroom tile under your feet. Think about how strange that actually is. You've never once had a heartfelt debate with yourself about whether to brush your teeth tonight. There's no internal negotiation, no pep talk required. It just happens. That's the finish line for every habit you're trying to build right now, and it's worth understanding exactly why some behaviors reach that finish line while others fall apart at the starting block. So why does a brand new habit feel so breakable? Because it hasn't been memorized yet. It is still living in the part of your brain that requires real, conscious effort. That region is called the prefrontal cortex, and think of it like the manual gear stick of your brain. It works, but it takes energy every single time you use it, and it is also the same part of your brain responsible for resisting temptation, making decisions, and staying calm under stress. Every time you force yourself through a new habit using sheer willpower, you are draining a battery that is already being used for a dozen other things. That's why the habit you were so excited about on Monday somehow feels impossible by Thursday. You didn't run out of desire, you ran out of battery. Now, here's where it gets genuinely strange. Neuroscientist Anne Graybiel at MIT has spent years literally watching, inside the brain, how habits move house. Her research shows that as a behavior repeats, activity slowly drifts away from that tiring, effortful prefrontal cortex and moves into an older, deeper structure called the basal ganglia. This is the same region that lets you walk without thinking about your legs, or type on a keyboard without looking down. Once a habit relocates there, it barely takes any mental effort at all. It just runs, quietly, in the background, like a program on autopilot. You're not fighting the habit anymore. Your brain has simply stopped treating it as a decision. But moving a habit from the front of your brain to the back of your brain takes time, not the 21 days you've heard 100 times. That number, believe it or not, came from a 1960s plastic surgeon named Maxwell Maltz. He noticed his patients took roughly 3 weeks to get used to a new face after surgery, or to adjust to a missing limb, and he mentioned it casually in a book. It was never a controlled study on habits. It was a passing observation that somehow became internet gospel, repeated so often that entire fitness apps and calendar streaks are built around it. Isn't it strange that a number from a plastic surgery memoir ended up running your entire self-improvement life? The real number is a lot less convenient and a lot more honest. In 2010, researcher Philippa Lally at University College London tracked 96 people who were each trying to build one new daily habit, everything from drinking more water to doing sit-ups after breakfast. She measured exactly how long each behavior felt automatic. Want to guess the range? On the fast end, 18 days. On the slow end, 254 days. The average came out to about 66 days. That is more than triple the myth you were handed as fact. So when you quit on day 9, you were not failing at building a habit. You were quitting in the middle of the hardest, most uncomfortable stretch of a process that was never supposed to feel easy that early. Nobody warned you about that part. You were promised a fast, effortless transformation, and when it didn't show up on schedule, your brain quietly decided something must be wrong with you. That belief is the real trap, and it was never true. It was never a discipline problem. It was a timeline problem based on a made-up number from a plastic surgery book. Here comes the twist that changes how you should actually think about habits. The ones that survive are almost never the ones you care about the most. They are the ones tied to the strongest, most boring, most repeated trigger. Wendy Wood's research keeps landing on the same conclusion. Habit strength depends far more on your environment staying consistent than on how badly you want the outcome. You can want something with your whole chest and still fail to repeat it if the cue around it keeps shifting. A walk at some random time whenever you feel like it rarely survives past a month. A walk that happens immediately after your morning coffee every single day in the exact same order has a real fighting chance. Your brain isn't rewarding how much you want something, it's rewarding the pattern. This explains something you have almost certainly felt but never had a name for: why habits built on pure willpower collapse the second life gets stressful, while habits built on cues survive almost anything you throw at them. When your prefrontal cortex is exhausted after a hard day, willpower is the very first thing to disappear. But a behavior that has already relocated to the basal ganglia doesn't need willpower to run. It just needs the trigger to show up. That's the entire reason some people still brush their teeth on their most exhausted night of the year, yet skip a gym session they genuinely wanted to go to. One habit lives in the automatic system, the other is still stuck in the fragile, effortful one, begging for energy it doesn't have. Think about your own exhausted nights for a moment. On the nights you're most drained, which habits survive without a fight? Almost certainly the oldest ones, the ones you've repeated so many times they no longer feel like choices at all. That's not a coincidence, and it's not because those habits matter more to you. It's simply proof of which system in your brain is currently running the show. Here's a scene you'll probably recognize. You come home after a long day, exhausted, and you tell yourself you'll skip the phone tonight and go straight to that new habit instead. 10 minutes later, you're scrolling anyway, and the new habit never even got a chance. That's not a willpower failure. Scrolling already lives in your basal ganglia. It has years of repetition behind it, tied to an extremely reliable cue, your exhaustion itself. Your new habit, on the other hand, is still stuck in the slow, effortful prefrontal cortex, competing against a fully automated opponent. It's not a fair fight, and it was never supposed to be. Not yet. The old automatic habit will always win against a new effortful one when your energy is low. That's not a character flaw. That's just how two different systems in your brain are wired to behave. So what actually works if motivation and willpower were never the real engine? Something smaller and far less exciting than anything sold to you in a productivity video. Attach the new behavior to something you already do without fail, every single day, no exceptions. Not, I will meditate more. Instead, something closer to, I will meditate for 2 minutes immediately after I pour my morning coffee, standing in the same spot in my kitchen. The size of the habit barely matters at the start. What matters is the consistency of the cue sitting right next to it. A tiny habit tied to a rock-solid trigger will always beat a huge habit tied to nothing at all. This is also why just try harder advice fails almost everyone who hears it. Trying harder only strengthens the effortful system, the one that gets tired, the one competing for the same limited fuel as everything else stressing you out that day. It never touches the automatic system at all. That's the part actual behavioral science keeps confirming, quietly, away from the loud slogans on social media. The goal was never to want it more. The goal was to make the behavior require less thought, until eventually it requires almost none. And give it roughly 2 months, not 3 weeks. Expect day 9 to still feel hard. Expect day 20 to still cost you real effort. That is not failure showing up early. That is the honest, documented timeline your brain needs to physically move a behavior into automatic territory. Most people quit at the exact point the research says it's supposed to feel worst, right before things start to ease up. If you can just make it past the point where it usually gets abandoned, the science says the rest gets noticeably easier. You didn't fail your past habits because you lacked discipline. You failed because you were handed the wrong number by a plastic surgeon writing about faces, not habits, and you quit exactly on schedule with a myth instead of the truth. Here is what to actually do today. Pick one habit, just one. Attach it to a cue you already never skip, like brushing your teeth or making coffee.
Shrink the habit down until it feels almost embarrassingly easy to complete. Then commit to roughly 66 days, not 21, and stop checking every morning whether it feels automatic yet. It isn't supposed to, not for a while. The finish line was just farther away than you were ever told, and now you finally know exactly how far. That number stuck in your head was never real. This time you know the one that actually matters, and it was never about willpower at all.